Right, welcome back. We're still in Cape Town and the conversation around the National Council of Provinces as well as local government. And we're looking forward to your questions at Morning Live SABC. And we're also fielding questions from our audience here. And there's a tweet that's come through from Mutswahaye Sirowe, who says, ask Ntate Manyoni, why is Salga employing drivers for mayors, but mayors are driving themselves in their official cars?
Yes.
Are you driving yourself?
Yes, I do drive myself.
Have you got a driver employed? How do we answer that? Because that means he's sitting around doing nothing.
No. We must agree. There are official duties that have to be done and our drivers have to drive it. But that doesn't mean mayors are incapacitated. Before you became a mayor, you have been a driver, so you have to drive yourself.
All right. So on official duties, they drive you.
Yes, yes.
When you want to go to your local Chisenyama, perhaps.
Oh, please. Yes,
you don't want the driver there. Okay, I hope that answers that question. Let's go to SPD Skosana, who's on table number 11. Yes. Yeah.
Let's welcome the only male panelist that you have today during this month of the women. Well, Honorable Manyoni, it is said that both legislative and executive authority rest with council. Now, my question is, given that kind of a scenario, how does council ensures that there's accountability if both the executive and the legislative authority rest with council? We've been able to notice quite good practices in around the country, one of which is Citibank. Maybe you want to share that with us. But coupled with that, Honorable Tau, you have the Council of Provinces, you've got provincial legislatures. For purposes of not duplicating what one another does, how do we look at this thing of the Council of Provinces sharing the same constituency with the provincial legislatures? There's no constituency for a provincial legislature exclusively. Neither there's one for NCOP or the NA. But how do we get involved in understanding and working around those spheres of government? Thank you very much.
Two very good questions, I think. So, gents?
No, thanks. Yes, it is true that council is what one would call the supreme body at local government on matters pertaining to policy and also policy implementation. But let's remember, Peter, we have just indicated that we have quite recently, in terms of evolution of local government, we have established what we call MPEC committees, Municipal Public Accounts Committees. It is those committees, they include all parties at the local government level. It is those committees that are doing oversight work for and on behalf of council. And then they do report to council, provide your Section 79 reports, as they are called, and so on, and council to consider and make a determination based on those reports. So even if we consider council to be the supreme body, also an executive arm, and at the same time a legislative arm, but it has committees that basically are supposed to do oversight on its own performance. And it is those committees again, or those reports, that are also considered by the Auditor General later to evaluate how far, after you have received your reports, have you moved in addressing the issues that so I think the mechanisms are there. The issue is how effective our established committees to deal with these matters. And I think also that we here will talk about the NCOP provincial visits and how they basically are dealing with matters pertaining to those.
Okay. Duplication, I mean, that is something that you need to sort of watch, isn't it?
No, thank you very much, Peter. There is no duplication. Perhaps one needs to clarify that. One is that the Constitution, for instance, says it defines public representatives who constitute the National Assembly as representatives of the people. And when it comes to the National Council of Provinces, it then says the representatives of provinces. It is a house that represents the interests of provinces and the local sphere. But can you do that without representing the interests of the people? You can't.
Right.
Therefore, it means that even public representatives who are in the National Council of Provinces, the council, are representatives of the people. The Constitution then clearly defines what provinces can do and what provinces cannot do insofar as legislation is concerned and national policy development is concerned. Coupled to that, it also defines what municipalities can do. It sets the limitations for municipalities, for provinces, and so on. But now the key question here is, what then becomes their role insofar as national policy is concerned? And that's where the glue then comes in, the National Council of Provinces, to say you can still, as a local sphere, as a provincial sphere, contribute towards the national policy direction of the country, whether it be legislation and so forth. So your interests will then be represented at the National Council of Provinces insofar as that is concerned. So it's not a question of duplication, but rather how to complement what the other cannot do at a national level. The second phase of the question obviously is informed by the question referred to SALGA, the accountability and the question of oversight. Because if you look at the mandate of Parliament, which is to pass legislation, to do oversight, and to ensure that the citizenry space is created for participation and so forth. Now, when it comes to the council, over and above that space created at the national level, we then have a flagship program that we refer to as the provincial weeks, because we accept that ours is about representation and profiling the interests of provinces and the local sphere. And you can't do that without linking with them. Hence, you would realize that our provincial weeks in the main has been about complementing what local government is doing through strengthening our oversight capacity. Where if we find that a municipality is not doing well, insofar as accountability is concerned and so forth, we would then want to know what is it that the provinces are doing. Because that responsibility cannot only be limited to SALGA, but rather we do have legislatures, we do have committees in the legislatures that have got the responsibility to do oversight. So that linkage becomes quite critical. And who is the glue in this instance? It will be the National Council of Provinces. Okay. And we do that twice in a year. We are just from one now, and the other one will be following in September. That is the provincial week. And we are taking a decision as the NCOP. Any delegate who goes to his province during an oversight program, you don't do it without the involvement of SALGA. Okay. It's part and SALGA is part and parcel of that program.
Okay, Mr. George, I want to come to you. The Back to Basics approach was launched just less than a year ago, and the question, I guess, is how have municipalities responded to this? Given that AG has highlighted that I think there's something like 25 municipalities that have had disclaimers for more than 5 years. Your strategic plan started 2012, we're 3 years in. They've been getting disclaimers for 5 years. It would suggest perhaps that we're not making progress, or are we? How is this Back to Basics impacting on the ground?
Peter, the glass is half full. It's not half empty. Now, when you look at issues objectively, you look at the setup that our country has established for our system of local government. It's quite a complicated setup that can pass any test anywhere in the world. And I think we need to celebrate that we have put in place a legislative machinery that places citizens at the center of a development agenda. Secondly, that lifts the accountability to standards that can be measured by anywhere. Thirdly, issues of public finance and accountability. So when you measure just from 2000 to now, to date we speak of more than 54% of our municipalities that reports on their accounts every year without fail and pass the test of audit accountability.
All right.
And that is not referred to by South Africans. So people will isolate a number of municipalities that have disclaimers. And we're not saying disclaimer, we need not frown out on those instances. But we need to look at the progressive growth of accountability in our country, where right back 3 years ago, we had only 5% of our municipalities were achieving the highest level of measurement, clean audits. Today, we're sitting with 58 municipalities in our country that have passed the diamond test, clean audit. We have more than 54%, as I say. Those, I would easily say, you can grant them gold status. AG comes, audit books, and finds that they have fairly represented their status. So what SALGA did as part of Back to Basics on the 18th of September, I think our Department of Cooperative Governance, our minister, will be convening a session again to celebrate 1 year of a Back to Basics program. And the pillar of accountability and financial management is quite high on the agenda. So there will be a reflection, and what is progress around that? To date, all our municipalities are reporting on Back to Basics. All our municipalities are reporting to Treasury on what is normally referred to as Section 71 reports. So we take that as a measure that seriously reflects on it. SALGA on its own, day to day, it has got a program called Municipal Audit Support Program. And we have assisted a number of municipalities. I'll give you an example of Limpopo. We had 30 municipalities in Limpopo. 22 of them last year had challenges where AG flagged the issue that had it not been for the intervention of SALGA, they would have received a qualification. Those municipalities were cleared from that albatross. You also have 22 municipalities where SALGA ran from last year when it launched its audit, what we call walk-in support, and out of those, they've now been lifted out of a poor audit.
And I'm just thinking, actually, that there's quite positive response from the audience here. They're getting excited with your statistics. But the reality is, actually, we can't be getting excited about people doing what they're supposed to be doing anyway. Do you know what I mean? This is their job. This is what they're supposed to be doing. So really, we should be thinking beyond that we are now complying, that we are now behaving. We really should be thinking about these are the major things that we've done to change people's lives. And I think we might get lost in this conversation if we focus on doing what we're supposed to have been doing.
Peter, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But the context is very important. Auditor General, when they come to municipalities, they don't only measure compliance. They look at 3 criteria: financial compliance, legislative compliance, and performance compliance. And I think our ramping up argument earlier on is about seeing municipalities accelerating the provision of services to communities. The chair of SALGA indicated earlier on that SALGA launched a consequence and accountability framework here in Cape Town, AG, in the report last year, has commended local government that more than 50% of auditees, meaning municipalities, are reporting on consequence and accountability. So there's a balance of ensuring sound financial management. At the same time, Stats SA releases a report every year in March. It's called Community Household Survey. So the service provision on water, electricity is reported by independent bodies. And local government is doing relatively well. But we're not saying there are many areas where there's no wrongdoing. So the consequence accountability and the anti-corruption strategy that SALGA launched here is beginning to show results. So it's about all municipalities taking a robust engagement decisively with cases where there's malfeasance, there's wrongdoing, and SALGA is at the forefront of ensuring that is realized.
All right, you've said corruption. Councillor Manyoni, I think it was just 3 days ago that Minister Pravin Gordhan talked about corruption seems to be spreading like a cancer. Is it getting worse, or what is happening? Because you're telling me one story, Minister's saying that it looks like it's spreading like a cancer. What is happening on the ground? How are we managing the corruption?
Our view is that corruption, as we indicated before, it's a societal problem. It's not only an institutional problem, because institutions are not operating in void, in vacuum. They operate in a society. So corruption in general, not only even in South Africa, worldwide, is an issue that we have to deal with, and we really are dealing with those matters pertaining to corruption. What the minister is stressing is consequences. We can't always be talking about corruption. We must also look into consequences pertaining to matters of corruption. And we need to stress that point. That's why the minister is also stressing it all the time. Because if we don't, we will end up accepting corrupt practices and they become a norm. And we would then think that it's normal for people to be corrupt. So when you hear the minister talking about it, it's basically part of our strategy to say we always have to warn South Africans about corruption.
All right, okay, let's go to, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. I just wanted to add something as a partner.
Right.
To some. You know, one thing that we found to be quite interesting as the NCOP is informed by what I spoke of earlier on, the provincial weeks. We are just from one now, in July. And if you look at the report that we presented in the House and debated, there is a narrative then that begins to say there's a positive shift. For instance, we had, in the past you would find we had municipalities in some provinces which could not even generate income. And we had revisited those municipalities this time around. And you would find that there are new, innovative, creative ways where municipalities are now beginning to be self-sustainable. And that on its own, it's a positive shift insofar as how we perceive municipalities are concerned. You have, for instance, a municipality like your Kimberley, Solplaatje municipality, whom over many years has been a chronic disclaimer recipient insofar as the Auditor General's outcome is concerned. But this time around, it has moved out of that now. And which we then begin to say, because that's where the point comes. If you have been chronic on this, and now you are here, what is it that you did differently that other municipalities can learn from you? That's how I can say, we, as a partner, we complement one another in the kind of work that we are doing. And therefore, the narrative must then begin to say, yes, there has been challenges. We are working together. There are positive outcomes now as we move forward.
All right. We'll explore that a little bit further when we come back from this break. And we're also going to hear from Dan Shongwe and also your tweets as well. Stay with us.